oftentimes we can't qualify for them.
Yeah. I appreciate the question. I don't have an answer, and we can get back to you. I personally don't have an answer.
Jackie, are we ready to switch to Karen here?
She's disappeared from the screen. There she is. Hi, Karen. Can you hear us?
Okay, so she can hear us, but we can't hear her yet. Got this? So close. So close.
Very close.
How about now?
Thank you.
Karen, can you say something?
Yeah. While she's waiting, I'm going to do a lightning round. What's your favorite local Bay Area water body? Mine's Glen Echo Creek.
I was thinking of Temescal Pool was for him this morning.
Good thing it's still good. Peter?
Wildcat Creek.
Wildcat Creek, yes. Tom? Yes.
I just want to add on to what Peter mentioned regarding the San Francisco Bay Improvement Fund and the San Francisco Bay Program, which, if all goes according to our expectations, we're talking about $54 million a year from here on. But they've identified focus areas, priorities, and nutrients is one of them, and that means there's opportunity for EPA to direct funding to support our efforts, particularly, that's not going to pay for a lot of infrastructure, but it is going to be available to help us advance our planning, help our being strategic and the like. So I strongly encourage you all to work through BACWA to tap that opportunity that is immediately at hand to help us advance the need for further planning and our commitments to the smart nutrient load reduction options.
Thank you, Tom. That's a great point. And another example of like really effective collaboration between the state, US EPA, and the community. So thank you. Anyone else want to volunteer their favorite local water body? Just popcorn style? Say it. Karen, could you try to speak again, please? Can you guys hear me now? That sounded like a promising oh. Can you keep talking, Karen? Yay, welcome.
Can you hear me?
Karen. Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
There's something needs to be muted. I hear a major echo when I hear you guys in the room. So I don't know. But if you can hear me, maybe I'll just start talking.
Yes,
Those
please
of
go
you,
ahead. We can hear you great.
I can see you in the room. So I'm just going to start talking.
Perfect.
And I've got a big head. Now I know what it feels like to be a board member who's at the board meeting remotely. So thank you so much for accommodating me remotely. I am the only person online, so therefore you guys must really want to hear what I have to say. So thank you for allowing me to be here remotely and for inviting me to talk. Eileen tried to avoid talking about nutrients. I'm going to actually talk quite a bit about nutrients today, and then I'll also touch on the Clean Water SRF funding and then round it out with some comments around where we're going with recycled water. So starting with nutrients, I'll just remind everyone that climate change is driving a major shift in the chemical properties of the world's ocean waters, including ocean acidification and hypoxia. And in fact, those impacts are expected to be experienced sooner and most severely along the West Coast. So we've done a lot of research and modeling, and it indicates that local stressors, not just global stressors like climate change, like discharges of nutrients, for example, can increase the frequency and magnitude of these conditions and further compound the effects on marine life and coastal ecosystems. And so we've been collaborating with the Southern California Coastal Water Research Project, or SCWRP, and the Ocean Protection Council and others to better understand the impacts of ocean acidification and hypoxia on marine life, the impacts from anthropogenic sources of nutrients on ocean chemistry, and the appropriate parameters and thresholds to address these impacts. And so we've started to scope out an amendment to the ocean plan to add water quality objectives and a program of implementation to address ocean acidification, hypoxia, and the effects of anthropogenic sources of nutrients in ocean waters. We've also been collaborating with US EPA, the regional boards, and Ocean Protection Council, as well as municipalities, to identify additional voluntary and regulatory actions that we could take to reduce nutrient loading from recycled water and wastewater discharges. We've been collaborating with an undergraduate research team, actually, at UCLA to evaluate the current flow rates and nutrient effluent loading from POTWs in the Southern California Bight. We're actually getting a presentation from that team next week on what they've found. So starting with the modeling, I'll just give a quick status update. SCWRP and UCLA developed a model that includes both the physical ocean modeling as well as biogeochemical model combined to evaluate the influence of land-based sources of nutrients on ocean acidification and hypoxia in coastal waters, focused on the Southern California Bight. And looking at the ecological consequences of intensifying these impacts and the impact from of nutrient management and potable water recycling scenarios. And so preliminary findings, much to our surprise, actually, when we launched into this, we thought climate change would dwarf any local inputs. But actually, we find that local anthropogenic nutrient discharges from POTWs to the ocean are contributing to meaningful declines in pH and oxygen for several months each year, and that managing the nutrients in waste discharges reverses these impacts. So additional monitoring, research, and analysis is underway. And this includes quantifying the effects of ocean acidification on possible habitat compression. So basically, the conditions in the ocean really reducing the amount of habitat available to species within the Southern California Bight, and applying the model to expand it up the coast in Monterey and San Francisco Bay as well. So we're evaluating also some additional modeling and research needs, such as refining the nutrient management and recycled water scenarios. And we're participating in an independent peer review that's being funded by the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, or CASA. I'm on the steering committee for that peer review, as is Lorian, and a number of other folks, to quantify model uncertainty and performance. And we at the State Board have contracted with SCWRP to develop a quality assurance project plan for the model to support the use of the model as it in developing water quality standards and evaluating waters for our integrated report. In terms of standards development and looking at other nutrient management options, as I mentioned, we're scoping an amendment to the ocean plan to establish water quality objectives. We're also conducting an initial effort. This initial effort is likely going to be limited in the Southern California Bight because that's where we have the most data, and the model analysis is farther along there. But we're also considering other actions to reduce nutrient loading, to address adverse impacts to the ocean and beneficial uses, which may include investigative orders or technology-based effluent limitations. We're looking at requiring POTWs to evaluate and report current nutrient reduction planning, feasibility of reducing nutrient loading, and proposals for additional nutrient reduction actions. And wanted to just give a shout out to BACWA and the rest of the team working on the watershed nutrient permit in Region 2, because much of the work that we're doing down in the Bight is modeled on the work that you all have already done there in the Bay Area. So you're giving us a nice framework for proceeding. And as I mentioned, we're collaborating with CASA to inform wastewater discharges of our staff activities and to support their effort to fund gathering information about nutrient management from discharges across the coast and in particular Southern California. So our next steps are looking at how we can integrate the results of the model peer review into our potential policy development efforts. We're finalizing the quality assurance project plan likely this fall, and initiating the outreach and engagement related to the standards development process for the ocean plan this early next year. So we're working on scoping at this point and doing internal collaboration and briefings so that we can start external engagement early next year. So with that, I'm going to move on to funding through the state revolving fund. This is not going to come as a surprise to you, but the SRF continues to be oversubscribed. This fiscal year, we received requests for funding that were more than twice the amount available. This year's intended use plan included new consolidation incentives to encourage the regionalization of wastewater service. There are additional performance metrics and targets to reinforce the state board's goals of timely and efficient processing of applications and disbursements. And it also gives the deputy director the authority to set a maximum per project limit for small community wastewater projects if there's not an adequate grant and principal forgiveness funds to fully fund the complete eligible application list. And just wanted to mention briefly the priorities that were set in the 23-24 intended use plan, starting with small disadvantaged communities and small severely disadvantaged communities. We're also focused on projects that convert on-site wastewater treatment systems to sewer, connect them up to sewer systems across the state. There's also a focus on geographically on the San Francisco Bay and Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta estuary, or the Bay Delta. And finally, sustainability and climate change. So that's where we are on funding. As you're probably aware, we don't know what the 24-25 budget holds. And so we're waiting to see what happens with the state budget before proceeding with our intended use plans for the next fiscal year. Finally, I just want to touch on recycled water. Eileen mentioned the governor's 2022 water supply strategy. It sets goals for recycled water volumes of 800,000 acre feet by 2030, which we believe is achievable based on the projects that we know are already planned and underway. And then 1.8 million acre feet by 2040, which will require significant investment for us to achieve. But to get there, we're going to continue to consult with the Recycled Water Strike Team to evaluate barriers to implementing recycled water projects and work toward removing those barriers. And we'll continue to utilize our volumetric annual report as a means to assess the progress toward meeting the water supply strategy goals. And we'll continue to fund research as funds are available to evaluate impacts from constituents of emerging concern, including PFAS, and to support technical advancements in recycled water technology and addressing issues related to that are barriers to recycling water. So again, I thank you for accommodating my need to be remote today, and apologies for being a hitch in your meeting giddy up, but I'm glad to be here and glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Karen, and thanks for your patience and flexibility. So we do have time for just a couple more. I'm hearing an echo. We do have time for a few more questions. Maybe if I step over here. Do we have any questions? Any more questions from the audience? No. Okay. We'll try it. Okay. So any questions in the audience or panelists, anything you'd like to add or any questions that you have for the BACWA community? Or you just all want me to turn off the microphone and go take a break?
I'll put myself up there again. This is a question for Karen.
You're going to have to get closer for me to hear you.
All right. So obviously the State Water Board and OPC have invested a lot in the model, which is going to be a key line of evidence for supporting future nutrient standards in the ocean. Are there other lines of evidence that you are likely to consider when making those determinations?
Lines of evidence to consider in terms of the thresholds that we're going to pick? Is that?
Whether you're meeting those thresholds or not.
Well, certainly, we've done a lot of work to look at the impacts of ocean acidification on shell dissolution. So we've looked at the use of aragonite saturation as our threshold that is most meaningful in terms of shell dissolution in the species that we've evaluated. So that would be one mechanism in terms of sort of water quality outcomes that we would look at. I'm not sure I'm answering your question fully. I'm not sure I understood completely your question, to be honest.
Okay, I think the echo's been taken care of. No, it hasn't been. Oh well. So here in the Bay Area, we had a massive algal bloom, and so that pointed towards the need to reduce nutrients. In the Southern California Bight, the case isn't quite as cut and dry in terms of observable data. So what I was really getting at was, to what extent are you going to 100% rely on the model to determine what nutrient load reductions are necessary, or are there other lines of evidence that you are going to consider?
Oh, well, we certainly will consider all potential lines of evidence to identify what the need for reductions will need to be. And we also recognize that the current model shows that the reductions need to be pretty significant and that they may not even be feasible. And so we need to recognize that and understand that there may be multiple ways that we need to address nutrients in the system. So you're asking me a question I don't know fully all of the answers to, but as you know, our process for going through developing water quality standards is extensive and requires a lot of information from a lot of lines of evidence in order to develop what the ultimate policy will be. So more to come.
Thank you, Karen, and everyone join me in thanking our panelists one more time. So we have a half an hour break. There's coffee and refreshments. And I want to introduce this again. Thank you, Lauren. When you hear this, it's time to come back. So please keep an ear for the cowbell, and we'll see you in a half an hour.
You know what I mean?
Mazzano. I'm not taking Ellen's role. Ellen,
Maybe I missed her.
her permanent role is the assistant of surface water branch, which includes all the Clean Water Act standards, TMDLs, permits, and wetlands. She's just filling somebody else's role for a little while that person is away, and then Tina Yin is covering for Ellen. So it's kind of a bit of a 3 or 4 month shuffle, and then we think it'll all trickle back down. And it's all
Zana and I
related.
started our careers at EPA together at the ALJ's office in DC after law school. So she's been, I sent her a picture of the panel. I said, I think you know.
Yeah, and Azana, I think, was one of those who's been working on the Water of the U.S. issue, which has been complicated for.
And I think now she's doing, we've been trying to plan like a girls' weekend, somewhere meeting in between.
Sure.
And I saw her in November in DC, but she, I think, is doing a detail right now at the EJ office.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah. So when you said that slide,
Well, all of our ripple is related to this EJE.
okay.
I think we're supposed to add 800 people to our agency. Even if that number